All right, now we're going to talk about a few other of the actually useful production level versions of color films that were produced and used widely across the world. This first one is really kind of fascinating. It's called Autochrome Lumiere. It's made by the Lumiere brothers. You can see this is a very, very up close look at what that film probably kind of looked like. Again, you'll see red, green, and blue used here to mimic the sense of the human eye. Um, Autochrome Lumiere, this technology, which was patented in 1903, is invented by Auguste and Louis Lumiere, the Lumiere brothers, is how they were best known. They were early filmmakers. They really focused the photographs that they took on the streets, architecture, people, interiors, and also grand events. Um, the way that this film is made is really kind of odd. Think back, look at this image again, and kind of keep this in your mind as I talk about this here. Um, so this is an additive color way of making an additive color process. It's a mosaic screen plate. The medium consists of a glass plate coated on one side with a random mosaic of microscopic grains of potato starch. They are dyed orange red, green, and blue violet. Um, but and so it's a little bit of an unusual variant of the red, green, and blue, but these act as color filters. The space between those dyed potato starch granules is lamp black. Lamp black, if you're not familiar, is if you burn a lamp, which probably would have been fueled by, at this time period, probably not petroleum based oil, but probably actually whale oil. Spermaceti whale oil was the predominant oil that would have been burned. But if you burn it incorrectly, it will produce a lot of soot. You can actually collect that soot. So it's like kind of an oily, pitch black thing. That fills the in between space. Um, the then that a black and white panachromatic silver halide emulsion. So similar to black and white films, silver halides being small, nearly microscopic silver granules, is coated on top of that filter layer. Um, so then this was put on glass plates with the glass side facing the lens. Usually you would photograph with the emulsion side facing the lens, but this is using those granulated dyed potato starch things to act as a filter to the silver emulsion. Um, you also had to use a very special orange yellow filter on the camera that would block ultraviolet light. It would also restrain the effects of blue and violet light in the spectrum. You lost quite a bit of light using these filters, and these plates needed pretty significant exposure, like long exposure versus black and white film. Um, Meaning that most things had to be photographed on a tripod or other kind of stand, and had to be photographed in bright light or very long exposures. For instance, these night photographs would have been pretty long exposures, um, but a pretty great way of um, rendering this color film. Another thing that really is kind of interesting about these two is that this film, once it was developed, would have been coated with shellac. Um, and shellac is made of insect shells from like a type of beetle. So you have potato starch grains, lamp black soot made of burning whale oil, and then sealed with insect shell casing shellac. This is a really, really kind of fascinating process. Um, but yeah, I mean, but again, renders really wonderful results in that autochrome Lumiere. These are probably from a World's Fair that was held in Paris when the Eiffel Tower was actually built. Um, the So next up is we have something that was made in Brighton, England. So we have right, a Russian-made color photography. We have a French-made color photography. Here we have an English one, and this is called Kinemacolor. It was really a motion picture process used primarily. 1908 to 1914 is when it was used. Really was not a very good process. I don't have as much process with this, but this is kind of projects black and white film behind alternating red and green filters to produce these color results. As you can see, not great detail and kind of more on that green and kind of cold spectrum, and doesn't have the same warmth and color fidelity. But they're making color film. And then probably the biggest leap forward is Technicolor. 1932. Technicolor is introduced as the process for making movies, right? And this, Technicolor is used in the motion picture industry. Actually, the very first cartoon, which was called Flowers and Leaves by Walt Disney, which was in 1932, was shot, right? Because animations were drawn and then photographed and then turned into films. But Technicolor was used for that in the very first time in 1932. Take that back, 1922. This process is used widely in Hollywood from 1922 to 1952 for about 30 years. It's used to shoot countless of the films that you've probably watched. The Wizard of Oz, Down Argentine Way from 1940, The Adventures of Robin Hood from 1938, Gone with the Wind in 1939, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from 1937, Gulliver's Travels from 1939, Fantasia in 1940. It wouldn't be uncommon to see, as you look at the end of a film, to see that this was that the films that you loved were shot in Technicolor. Here's just a handful of examples of some photographs being made with Technicolor. Then we have, in 1935, Kodak, right? We mentioned, and looked at Kodak just a few minutes ago, it seemed. Kodak comes out with Kodachrome. One thing to note is that, right, if something produces a negative, it's called a print film. If something produces a positive, which Kodachrome does, it is called reversal film. This is reversal film. And typically that chrome, the word chrome at the end of these is describing this reversal film process. So like if you've ever seen, slide film, like someone shows you a slide show using an old projector and slides, you can see that if you hold the film up or the slide up to a window, you see the colors perfectly and naturally. They're not backwards like a negative form. This Kodachrome is really incredible stuff. These are some images that are actually from the Library of Congress. This is from the WPA era when women were working in the factories. Think like that Rosie the Riveter era. So this film was produced really only up until 2009. And the processing of that film ended in 2010. So really not that long ago did this film and its process end and give way to digital. Here's some more examples. This is, again, from the Library of Congress. Most of these photographers are anonymous or not very well-known photographers. Some other examples here. I love, if I was going to collect a single photograph, this is like one that I would absolutely love. She's actually putting some finishing touches on a bombardier nose section of a B-17 Navy bomber in Long Beach, California. This was for the Douglas Aircraft Company plant. That airplane was known as the Flying Fortress. And I just absolutely love these Library of Congress images from training camps, and this is World War II era photography here. Really kind of beautiful imagery. And then we get I think this is the last one that I'm going to talk about here. This is Agfacolor New, and this film is actually still in use today, as far as I know. Of course, like in the era of digital photography, these technologies sometimes end rather abruptly. But as far as I know, this is still being used. It's a German-made company, so we looked at Russian, French, English, American, and German. So, and this is a reversal film as well. This Agfacolor was a print film. Agfachrome is the reversal film of that, which is the direct positive film. And here's a few examples of that being shot. That's actually one of those small Kodak cameras that we looked at just a little bit earlier in this module. Wonderful. If you recognize Frida Kahlo here. All right, and that's it. This is actually a little bit of an advertisement for what you're going to see with the Kodak stuff if you haven't watched that already. For Kodak's, you push the button, we do the rest. So be sure to watch those things on Kodak and the Brownie, and just about how George Eastman kind of changed the world. So, all right, and I think that's it for this module.